like magic. How's it going?
Very well, Eric. How are you?
Excellent. I'm fantastic. Thank you for coming on and doing this with me. Like we were just talking about, I think the last time we spoke, we had what I remember is a pretty lengthy phone conversation. And
Yep.
I don't like to talk on the phone for a long time usually, so that must have mean it was a good thing because I remember that we were on for a little bit. So that's usually
Well,
a good thing.
you were kind enough to spend a fair amount of time with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I really appreciate that because I learned so much talking to the people who've been committed to child safety and drowning in particular, and very educational. So I appreciate your time.
And you also go to the NDPA conferences too, right? Did you hear me?
Oh, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, no problem.
May have a little bit of internet latency.
Yeah, and you also go to the NDPA conferences as well, right?
Yes. Yep. I've been to the last 2 years, and found that to be a place to meet some wonderful people. Very committed group, very passionate group, and the mission is one of the most important things going out there. So. I've gotten a lot out of NDPA. I encourage anybody who might be listening to this to get involved with NDPA. Terrific organization. They're growing and maturing and developing plans and capabilities that I think will really bring them forward significantly in the next year or two.
Yeah, I served on the board for a couple of years, and then as the vice president for about a little over a year. And yeah, they do tremendous work, just a great organization. And I was really upset that I missed the conference in Pittsburgh that you went to, both for the conference itself and also for the really cool hotel they had there. What an amazing spot that they had that Pittsburgh conference in.
Yeah, that was a really cool one. One of the great things was we had use of the pool on the roof, and had a session out by the pool for various vendors that had technology or technology products, safety products in particular, and that was a great event. Beautiful morning. Only problem was it's near the hospital, and some helicopters kept coming in. We were streaming it live on Facebook, and I know that it was fine for us on the roof, but I think those helicopters interfered with the ability at certain points to hear what was going on the live stream. But it was overall a terrific event. I think 3 full days I was there, and just jam-packed with information and also a unique opportunity to meet the community that's really passionate and doing something and getting involved in reducing the rate of drowning and the associated death and injury from drowning. So it's a great group to get involved in.
So were you able to join the technology panel?
I was, yeah, last couple of years.
Very cool.
And it's also, I think it's kind of unique. It's sort of a trade show. I mean, vendors, get a table and we're able to talk to people and show our products, and that is kind of trade showy, but it's so much more than that. And it's a great experience because we get to meet the other vendors, and some of them are competitors, some of them are not really competitors. But it's a very collegial group. I mean, there's not this feeling of competing with each other. There's this feeling that we're all in this together. And this could be a great market, a big market, a market which you can do well financially in. But most of all, I think there's a passion and a commitment on the part of practically everybody who comes there to be involved, to push technology forward so that in the future, technology can play a role, an important role, and hopefully drive a period of time where technology can really help reduce the rate of drowning.
Yeah, you're right. There is this kind of, brotherhood of sorts in the water safety arena where, the competition side doesn't seem to be as brutal as it can be in other industries, and I think, part of that has to do with the layers of protection concept, that we all know that each layer of protection is a different add-on. And when my dad coined that term back in 1987, when he first used the phrase layers of protection and then wrote it down in 1989 in a book, which is the first time it was ever used in writing, the reason he did it was just that reason, for competition. He was, at a meeting at the Consumer Product Safety Commission where, the swimming instructors were saying that, swim lessons were the best way to go. And the alarm people were saying no alarms were the solution. And he was saying pool fence. And, everybody was, trying to say that their method was the silver bullet to, prevent drownings. And because he didn't want to compete with alarms and lessons and supervision, for that matter, he said, no, you need them all. You need layers of protection. And it was as much of an educational thing as it was a competition, marketing thing. And, it's turned out pretty good. I think everybody uses that phrase and definitely the ideology now. So it's been really beneficial.
Yeah, and it's a term that I think can be embraced by the so-called professional or somebody with decades of experience in aquatic risk management. They know what that means, and they can drive recommendations and drive their expertise and the delivery of their expertise with that basic concept as a foundation. So it's a professional term, but it's also a term that the layman or the person that you're talking to about this that may not, be as focused as you are on drowning and what a big problem it is. It's a very intuitive, common sense term. So people get it, and it doesn't take a whole lot of explanation to say, this is the framework that we use, and get, complicated with delivering the message. It's layers of safety. People understand that. And then you can get right in to talk about those. And it's not unusual for when I'm talking to somebody or having a conversation, they'll ask me, well, so you're replacing lifeguards, or you're replacing, life jackets or PDFs, we no longer do. And I say, no, every single layer of safety is important. And we're not eliminating anything. Our task, our goal, our mission is to establish a new layer of safety, an additional layer of safety, and hopefully dovetails, very, very closely to current best practices and does not interfere, in fact, reinforces and supports the other layers of safety that are in place.
So, to give people some context, explain for everybody, what it is your technology does and why it's new for water safety.
Okay. Yeah, our company is called Sentag, SENTAG, and this technology was developed in Sweden, and that took about 2 years in development. Well over $1 million been spent on developing the product. There have been 2 new releases that were successfully released and adopted. At this time, it's still very much an early stage company, both in Europe and in North America. We are an independent company in North America, or Sentag USA, as we call ourselves. And we source our product from the manufacturer in Sweden. So it's a very close relationship. It's a pleasure dealing with the Swedes. They're developing their side of the business opportunity very well, and we're a little bit behind them. They started a couple years ahead of us, but it's starting to really build momentum here in the U.S. What the technology is based on a wristband. So a wristband is put on the swimmer. The swimmer puts a wristband on, and in that wristband is a depth and time setting. So we have a depth sensor and a clock and a battery and the ability to send a signal from that wristband. That's basically sonar technology. There's a signal with a specific acoustic signature, and then that gets forwarded from the pool to a controller, where we have some fairly sophisticated software that does signal processing software to pick that signature out of a extremely noisy environment, which is every vibration basically entering the pool, and it's pretty noisy. If you just put a pair of headphones on, you hear loud static basically, and every now and then a sharp noise if somebody puts a chair down hard on the deck of the pool. The hydrophones are extremely sensitive, so you can sometimes even hear a truck rumbling by, a quarter mile away.
Wow.
And so the job of the controller and the signal processing software is to pick that signal from the wristband out of that background noise. Then we have a routine that reconfirms that it's the actual signal, and we get confirmation that it's a positive. And then we issue an alarm. And when we issue the alarm, that can be delivered in many, many different ways. Typically, there's a choice to have a siren or a strobe at poolside. We can interface to handheld radios. We can send real-time texts so that the lifeguards in the facility can be notified by radio, or they'll be at poolside and see or hear an alarm. But we can also send real-time texts to other members of the staff. We can interface to the entire handheld radio system and a larger security infrastructure. And, the general manager or management or other individuals as appropriate can receive a real-time text that an alarm is happening in pool number 2 or what have you. So that's basically the system in a nutshell. Wristband-based. When the swimmer goes below the setting in the wristband, a countdown starts. So we typically recommend a setting in the wristband of about 30 touches for about 30 seconds. And that's intended to back up essentially the 10-20 standard, so that if the lifeguards are scanning and they see an event and they perform to that 10-20 standard that they're trained to, they'll get to that swimmer and get their airway clear, and the alarm may not even go off in that kind of event. If, however, the lifeguards, for whatever reason, miss the event and the swimmer goes below 32 seconds, a countdown starts at the time they pass through the plane. And if they stay below that setting for, say, 30 seconds, the alarm is issued. So it conforms or dovetails to current best practice, but it's still fast enough or quick enough to alert a lifeguard or staff that something is happening that they need to be aware of, and get to that victim and perform a successful rescue. So the question is, 30 seconds doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people, but
so real quick,
I don't think that's really very controversial for the aquatic community.
For anyone who doesn't know, what is the 10-20 rule for lifeguards?
Well, that's an expectation, I guess you'd call it, or a training goal to get a team to perform, so that essentially, on a theoretical basis, 100% of drowning events are identified within 10 seconds, and the victim is reached and the rescue commences within 20 seconds. And if you do that, you can, get, as we all know in the profession, you can get people to the side of the pool, you can do an extraction, and the chances are that rescue will be very, very successful, to the point where, if you get to them, get them out of the pool within 45 seconds or so, you can expect pretty good results. But we all know that seconds count. So if it goes to a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes, now you're in danger of some permanent injury. And of course, depending on the blood mass and the weight and all kinds of factors, within 4 or 5 minutes, it's usually fatal. So seconds count.
So if I'm an observer and I'm a layperson and I'm watching this in use, what will I see? I'll see someone put on a wristband. I'll see them enter the water, be underwater for X amount of time, then an alarm go off, right?
Yes. And if going a little bit deeper on what we've done and why, the setting of 32 inches, I'm about 5'10", average height. So 32 inches comes just below my knee. And so I can have the wristband on my wrist, my hands down by my side. I can be stroked, doing laps in the pool. I can go off a diving board, go down 12 feet, touch the bottom, come back up. And the alarm won't go off under those conditions. So you can play in the pool, you can work out in the pool, you can do what you normally do in the pool, with the exception of extended breath hold. And of course, we know that over the past several years, the dangers of extended breath holding have become well documented.
Right. So
practically all the pools I talk to now, certainly every lifeguarded pool that I come across today, and in most commercial or public pools, ban extended breath holding. So one question we get is, if that 14, 15-year-old boy who likes to challenge, everything, decides they're going to game the system and go down, a lot of people can hold their breath for more than 30 seconds on the bottom of the pool. And that's very true. But actually, if that's happening, that individual is, breaking a pretty important safety rule. And it gives you an opportunity to have a serious conversation, with that individual, but other individuals that are present about breath holding at that point. So I guess if somebody wants to gain the system in that way, it is possible. But we also believe that that's, very much in line with the current best practice, which is to discourage or outright ban extended breath holding. So
plus, if somebody knows that their extended breath holding is going to set off an alarm that is going to stop the pool and go off and screech, just like you're not going to open the fire door at the back of a theater because it's going to set off the fire alarm. I think embarrassment and shame will probably keep you from doing that, especially if you're aware that that's the result.
Yeah, and so hopefully one strong conversation would put an end to that kind of behavior. But I like the way you thought about that. This is similar to a fire alarm. This is a safety thing. Now, in most buildings, certainly large buildings, or commercial buildings, office buildings, hotels, etc., there's a fire alarm system that is extensively installed, tested, kept up to standards in the entire building. We very rarely hear the fire alarm go off, right? Usually it's a test. Right. Usually we say, okay, we have a test scheduled for our fire alarm, we're going to be doing that at 9 a.m. on Thursday or what have you. But, breaking that box or pulling that lever without cause is taken extremely seriously. And I think, need to get to that same view of all the layers of safety in aquatics. And, lifeguards are challenged in that way because they're expected to be, they're expected to serve the guest in some fashion. And that, I'm sure, is a huge spectrum from pool to pool. But they're, by serving guests, you can't forget that they're responsible for the lives that are in that pool. And to mess around or to gain, the layers of safety that they're using along with their own vigilance and their own training to keep patrons safe or guests safe is, not acceptable. So I like your reference to a fire alarm or a smoke alarm or seatbelts. Same thing with seatbelts. We don't mess around with our seatbelts. We put them on when we get in the car. We rarely need them. Hopefully, we never need them. Most of us will never be in a car where an airbag goes off. But if it does go off, we certainly value the protection that both seatbelts and airbags and the combination of them together can bring to that incident. And those are really an example of layers of safety. The seatbelt and the airbag work together as two different technologies, but complementary technologies.
So you've been talking about this in conjunction with the lifeguard. Is there a residential application, or is it only for, commercial or public pools?
What we developed is really with the lifeguarded pool in mind. We've had a lot of inquiry and conversations with members of the hospitality industry. Of course, I think in general, that industry is kind of going through a conversation about, what are we still comfortable with just putting signage up saying, at your own risk, there's no lifeguard in this pool.
Right.
So that's a potential direction where we could be, very, very useful. And that's actually, one of the vertical markets that we're focused on is hospitality. The other being aquatic risk management, or, another way of saying lifeguarded pools. So, did that answer the question?
So I was asking about residential pools.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Okay. We've had quite a bit of inquiry from very high-end pool building. Pool design, a residential pool going in for $1 million with a beautiful, pool house and extensive landscaping, et cetera, et cetera. We've gotten a lot of inquiries at that level. But we're a company, and one of the things I've learned in my technology industry is when you're at this point in time, focus is everything. To try to respond to the different, calls that are coming into you, and get distracted and get pulled into an area that you're not really primarily focused on. And in my experience, that's generally a mistake. So our focus was in development to back up the lifeguard. And that's what we're focusing on. Not that somebody couldn't, build a compelling enough case with me so that I would put it in their residence. And there is actually a really cool model, because one thing that I haven't mentioned, but I'll bring it into the conversation, is our wristband is enabled with what's called RFID technology, radio frequency identification. And what that allows us to do is to use the wristband in a smart lock situation. So if you have a sliding glass door or French doors that opened out into a pool area, you could enable those doors with smart locks so that you had to have a wristband on to go through those doors. And that ensures that the wristband is in place when somebody walks into the pool enclosure. So that model, which we have deployed in several sites in Europe, where the guest at at a private aquatic facility can actually come in the front door. They can check in their locker, they can open the locker room, they can access their locker, and then they can access the pool with the wristband utilizing RFID and smart locks. And that would be a pretty cool technology to put in a residence. But so far we've declined from doing that.
That would even be cool on a like a cruise ship, you know.
Yes, and that's actually a huge wave of adoption happening currently all through hospitality. And Disney has their Magic Band. All the cruise lines now have an RFID medallion. They put it in bracelets or amulets, around the neck. I think it'd be absolutely ideal in a cruise ship environment. But that
what does your wristband
frankly
look like?
I think our price points we need to come down a bit, and the overall adoption of RFID, that's really a very large wave right now, is driving down the price of RFID technology quarter by quarter. It's really dropping quickly now. They're kind of halfway up the bell curve of the adoption cycle. And typically that prediction would be at that point in the adoption cycle, that costs would drop because you're getting mass adoption, and that's putting the units manufactured up every quarter, and that drives down overall unit costs. So we really need to get to that point in technology for pools. We're not at the adoption, side of that curve. We're really pre-adoption. So right now, there's a lot of interest. I've seen a tremendous swelling of interest and awareness over the past year, and I think people are in the community to say to themselves, I've heard about technology now from half a dozen different sources. Maybe I better start to learn something about it. Maybe this is in the future. And what does it mean to me and my pool and my facility? So that's the first step. Out of that group, certain people raise their hands and be, early adopters, as they're called. And out of that experience will come data, experiential stories or conversations, and that will in turn feed the interest of the next buying mentality, and then you're on your way to mass adoption. And so when that cycle plays itself out, the unit price of all our software and hardware, but also all of our competitors, will come down. Some competitors will fold, others will thrive. There'll be new entries to the market that we haven't even heard of today, and that kind of churn or that kind of adoption cycle will bring prices down and drive further adoption. So we really want to go through that phase focused on commercial, lifeguard pools, and hospitality as a second vertical market, and at that point, I think we'll be prepared to do a little bit, and we do need to do some R&D spending to get to the residential price point and a system that can be delivered and installed in the pool, for a very reasonable price. So I'd love to do residential. There's 12 million of those pools. Right? There's about 600,000 target pools in our two vertical markets. There's 12 million residential. So a good solution for residential is a home run. And we hope to get there with our technology. There's a good possibility somebody will come forward with a low price point that's not necessarily appropriate for commercial pools, but is a good, solid step forward in residential. And I think that's a winning niche that's open right now.
So what does the wristband actually look like?
Well, if you don't mind me standing up for a second, I'll go get one. I should have had one here with me to show you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, go for it.
Be right back.
Yeah, I'm curious to see it because I've seen a few different wristband technologies. You know, my good friend Bob Lyons is the inventor of Safety Turtle, and his looks like a turtle.
Okay, I'm back.
There you go.
So here is a wristband.
All right.
So this is surgical tubing. These ports in the back give it access to pressure in the pool, and this is the top. So I need a bigger one for my fat wrists here. So this is the wristband on my wrist. You know, very comfortable, bulletproof, solid as a rock. I think there's probably some aesthetic improvements we could make on this, but it's extremely functional, simple, ABS plastic and surgical tubing, you know, almost indestructible. And that's what the wristband looks like. This little tag on the top where it says send tag, that's an RFID chip. So if you've got an RFID infrastructure, we just get the spec number of your chip that you've chosen to use and then order those chips and put them right on the wristband. So that is also very simple. The same wristband that does not have RFID can be RFID enabled, you know, very, very straightforwardly. These wristbands are hermetically sealed at the factory.
Oh, wow.
So there's no need to charge a battery. And the only battery power we use is a couple of microvolts when the two chips are used for depth and time. And then if an alarm needs to be issued, the battery has to sufficiently power the alarm signal. But when you think about it, it's, you know, the alarm signal is not something that happens every day.
Sure.
So it happens infrequently or very infrequently for an individual wristband. You might have 400 or 500 wristbands in the pool at any one time, and our system is just listening for one wristband going off. So, and that's a data point to the lifeguard saying, it doesn't even really absolutely say that somebody's drowning. What the data point is, somebody in your pool or is a wristband in your pool is beyond the safety settings that the management of the pool has determined are appropriate. And if you have your eyes on that individual, if you know exactly what's happening, great, you're in control. If you don't and the alarm goes off, it's time to figure out in the next 4 or 5 seconds, you know, what to do, where to go. So it really, the lifeguards do exactly what they're trained to do. We don't change their protocols or change the way they're trained. What we do is we add the alarm kind of on as the last layer of safety, so that if they do, for whatever reason, miss something, you know, this will alert them that there's a situation in the pool that they need to attend to. And so you know, it's what the insurance companies call a low frequency but catastrophic event, like an automobile accident. Doesn't happen often, but when it happens, you know, it's important data delivered to the security staff.
So I think we talked last time, and I mentioned my very good friend Bob Lyons, Dr. Lyons. He invented the Safety Turtle, which is another wristband system. And in that system, the child, normally under 5, usually small children, wears this wristband. It looks like a turtle on top. And if it gets wet at all, it sends a radio frequency to a base station alarms. That wristband has it's key lockable because it's, you know, for little children and they don't want kids taking the wristband off. But I think your system is more voluntary and, you know, probably for a slightly older demographic too. So do you have any plans to add like a locking feature to it for little kids, or is that really not the market you're going for anyways?
Well, there's lots of demand for GPS tracking, and what that would allow you to do is really identify where that individual wristband that you're focused on is in a facility map when they're out of the water. When they're in the water, you would know that as well. You would say, okay, they're in the water, they have the wristband on,
right?
That's good. Or nope, they're over at the gift shop, buying T-shirts, or they're in the canteen getting, an ice cream cone. So there's a lot of demand for that. We've heard that request, and we're looking into that. But the point that you brought up about children is an important one, because actually drowning rates with children, unfortunately, are fairly flat. But there's some indication statistically that we're almost at the verge where we're going to be able to identify a decline in drowning in the 1 to 4, and maybe say 4 to 6 or 7 or 8 in that age group, because of all the attention that the U.S. Swimming Foundation and many of the organizations that have joined the umbrella of NDPA and lots of organizations across the country that support swim lessons for young children. And that absolutely is, the best thing that you can do. We support that, obviously, 1,000%. But we're starting to see an uptick in drowning events in the senior population. And the reason, I think, is pretty straightforward. If you're a health conscious person, you like to get your exercise, and you've been out, doing a couple of miles in the morning, 3 times a week for the last 30 years, all of a sudden your knees and your hips and other parts are not what they used to be when you get into your 60s. And so the huge baby boom demographic that's now entering or is in their 60s is starting in a very significant pattern to kind of go away from impact exercise and seek out low impact exercise. Yoga is a good example, huge boom in popularity. And swimming is a natural place to go for that. Because you can get a great workout. It actually surprises most people that don't work out swimming. They think, oh, this is not like running. And yet, you put them in there and say, okay, do 200, 250 yards, at a pretty good clip, and see how you feel. They're surprised by, what a rigorous workout it is. So it's gaining in popularity. There's access to pools in our country, thankfully, all over the place in most cities. Most areas have a Y or a high school or a municipal pool or somewhere where they can get regular swimming exercise, and that's becoming more and more popular. Unfortunately, the flip side of that is that there's more drownings taking place in that demographic, and many of those are caused by substantial medical events in the pool in that senior fainting, slight stroke, heart attack, even arrhythmia, that kind of scares you a little bit, can cause heart breath involuntarily. And if you're underwater or your mouth is underwater at that point, you can get into trouble quickly. So we really encourage our wristband for all patrons of a facility, because anyone can drown. Even very good swimmers from time to time, have a problem. And but it's up to the pool management. Certainly, we encourage a protocol that identifies the swimming ability of each swimmer. And, you might have a blue wristband for one level of swimming ability and a yellow one for another. They might have 2 different settings. This might be for a child that really shouldn't go past the 3-foot mark or even the 2-foot mark. And then this one, could be for an adult that is going to be swimming laps or something like that. So we do encourage everyone, but certainly in the senior population and in the population of 15 and under, statistically, those populations are at the greatest risk.
So I had asked about the strap being key lockable for small children, or maybe even, in nursing homes, patients with Alzheimer's and dementia. Is that something you guys are looking into in the future?
Yes, we do have a couple of designs on the drawing board for the next generation wristband. We've actually shown those to some current clients. There's 17 sites with this system up and running and live in Europe. And so we showed, our prototype, which is a nicely designed band, has a buckle that is designed to not necessarily need a key, but it's designed to go on and stay there.
Like a watch.
More secure than your normal watch buckle. And actually the users currently, the guests in the pool that actually, use this every time they go in the pool, many of them really prefer the simple plastic one with surgical tubing, because there is no buckle. And the surgical tubing can be sized, in an infinite number of ways. You don't, it just say how long you want the surgical tubing on the next run of these 100 wristbands, and you get whatever sizes you want. So you can see we have the ability to be pretty wide in our sizes. This is a small one. That's a much bigger one. And the patrons using these currently they haven't really, voted down the new prototype, but they say, no, we kind of like what you have right now. It's not flashy, but it works, and it's comfortable, and it's bulletproof. And it doesn't require you stopping to buckle it on your wrist, which could be a pretty substantial advantage with young children.
Right, absolutely.
Young children. So, and it also makes it impossible for it to just fall off in the water, and makes it, I think, more difficult to remove while you're swimming. So if for whatever reason, you did want to take this off and drop it to the bottom, and be a pest in that way, it's less likely with this than something with a buckle. And that's just a personal kind of point of view. But it's interesting that what we thought was our, to market, test the technology, let's keep it simple and bulletproof, and this is what we ended up with, tends to actually have some attraction to a lot of people over something that's, beautifully designed, looks like an Apple smartwatch and that kind of thing. So, technology never stops. So.
Yeah. So if I'm a YMCA or a commercial pool or even a hotel with a lifeguard, and I want to get in on testing one of these things, how do I do that?
How do you get in touch with us, or how do you actually implement it in your facility?
Both. So yeah, say I want to, get one of these. What do I do?
Yeah. Well, you'd give us a call. Sendtag USA. I do most of my social media networking and that kind of thing on LinkedIn. I find it to be a good vehicle. I find the focus on the business networking to me to be attractive, as opposed to Facebook and Twitter and some of the others. Now you need to be doing that, and you need to be a citizen of the world. You're going to be using that technology. But LinkedIn, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, and what I'll do is I'll post this and give an email address and a phone number, which are easy to find on my LinkedIn profile. But essentially, if you get in touch with us, we like to have conversations. We like to understand your motivations, talk a little bit about your facility, just a quick bird's eye view of the pool is helpful, discussion, and that can be hand drawn and scanned and sent. It doesn't have to be, architectural drawings. We can start with, kind of a semi-accurate hand drawing of the pool. And what we'll do is we'll talk through together, what your current environment is and what your future state might be with installing SENTAG. One of the areas that we've developed is an approach we call SIPS, SIPS, SENTAG Integrated Pool Safety, because we are passionate about integrating our technology to the other appropriate layers of safety that are either existing, or we believe it's a great opportunity, if you're looking at our system, to actually do a risk management assessment and maybe add a kiosk for PDFs. Because let's say you're not testing for swimming ability now, and in this conversation we say, okay, there's a lot of advantages in testing for swimming ability. Well, once you take that step, then that also allows you to say, okay, if you can't swim, if you're a complete non-swimmer, if you're a toddler, if you meet these criteria, we're going to ask you to wear a PDF as well as put the wristband on. Because again, both of them working together will be more effective than either one by itself. So that really is most of the conversation, is how am I going to do this in my environment, rather than what is the software doing. We do get some people that are very technically oriented. They kind of geek out with all the technology and love to get under the covers, but really the technology is proven. It's in place in Europe. It's working well. We have everything from Mandarin Oriental Hotel in London to water park in Belarus. That's the third largest water park in Europe, and private clubs, etc. So a real good mix of different client types. So it is proven. So to me, and of course, we need to communicate that to the client to an extent sufficient so that they agree with me, right? They're not going to buy it without, some demonstration, and some explanation and checking to make sure that those statements are true. But once we get past that, let's assume it works. The real conversation is about protocols, about how you're going to distribute the wristband, how you're going to collect the wristband. And those should all fit with an overall pool plan and set of protocols that make sense. So we call this process, SIPS, or the SENTAG Integrated Pool Safety. And that's a kind of a virtual light risk management review. And if you have, fully developed risk management plans, if you've hired somebody to come in and do some audits or make recommendations, all that data is good input to that conversation about, what is this going to mean for your operation? Because it's got to work smoothly in order to be as effective as possible. And, it's the kind of technology that also requires some updating and training over time. So that's part of the conversation as well. How are your lifeguards really going to absorb the use of this? And what does it change in their in-service training? So those are the real kind of granular discussions that need to take place in order to determine how this is going to work and what your total cost of ownership is over 4 or 5 year depreciation or amortization schedule.
So, I think technology like yours is the future. I think, all the things that are coming out, the wristbands, the drones with cameras on them, these all these detection technologies. I think, this is going to be the future of water safety. And I think you're really on the, the cutting edge of it. So, I really appreciate you coming on and explaining it to us. CENTAGUSA.com is your website, right?
Sorry, Eric, you broke up there for a second.
Your website is CENTAGUSA.com, is that right?
Yes, www.sentag, SENTAG, and then USA. So one word, Centag USA. Everybody reads it and says Centagusa, but
Centagusa.
it's
like
CentagUSA.com.
Beautiful.
And,
all right. So
and,
folks can find you there.
My name is Jamie Goetsch. The spelling is a little weird. It's Goetsch. Bad news, it's a little weird name. The good news is once you learn how to spell it, you never forget. And there's not a whole lot of us out there on LinkedIn. So if you get another Jamie Goetsch, it's probably this guy in California that I bumped into 2 or 3 times.
Nice.
He's got the same name. It's not a common one. So
not at all. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the luck with your company and with the development of your technology. It's exciting stuff. And, Richard Kaufman said in the comments that it's, a real game changer. He said he's seen it in person and it's really impressive. So, I think we can expect big things, and, I'm excited to see them.
Well, Eric, thank you very much for the opportunity to spread the word. And I hope to see you soon at NDPA.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, Jamie. Thanks, everybody. You guys have a great day.